Dun, dun, dun. I'm going to get everybody to stand up. Please and thank you if you're able to. Look around beside you, look around to the other side, shake a hand, give a fist bump, introduce yourself to your new friend. Don't be shy. Make a friend. It's the Yukon. Small community things are what we do. Perfect. Alrighty. Thank you. You may all be seated. Thank you. It's always good to make new connections and strengthen community, so thank you for partaking in my little friendship building exercise. Again, my name is Taylor Rock. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a nurse here at the hospital, but I also co-chair 2 different nonprofits in town, Bite Empowering Youth and Spring Home Society, as well as Chill with Yukon Roller Derby, Yukon Circus Society, and Yukon Boxing Society, because why not? Just nonprofit it up. But today we have some impressive individuals for a fun presentation on vitamin D. If you're like me and you grew up in the Yukon for at least part of your spot, you might have a magnet in your home that says everybody needs the D. My grandparents had it on their kitchen fridge. It's a conversation piece. It's a great time. And this is Dr. Andy Roebuck. He's an assistant professor at psychology. He recently got a PhD in anatomy, physiology, and pharmacology. And if you've taken any of those courses, you know this man must be smart because that's so much memorization. We also have David here and Jasmine as well, his research friends, assistants, co-partners, research superstars. Awesome, take it away, guys. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I still haven't figured out how to talk into a microphone, so I apologize in advance for that. I also have to look at my slides because I don't know what I'm talking about. So I'm Andy. This is David. David's going to help me with some of this talk. So if you've been to last year's summit, I presented on some of this work before. So I have to start with a bit of an introduction. What are we doing? Why are we here? And then I'll share some of our new data that we've generated throughout the year. So first off, I'm Andy. The introduction went through all this. My interests in research are really in the biological basis of neurological and psychiatric illness. I care about what happens during life, how it affects your biology, and how it affects the development of your brain and your nervous system, and how that precipitates into mental health disorders. So a lot there. These days, the simplest way to look at it is I'm interested in developmental origins of health and disease. So what's happening in early life and how does that predispose us to developing a psychiatric illness, a neurological impairment, or some other health condition? Because what happens early in life kind of sets the stage for the rest of our experience on this planet. So one area we've been looking into, and this is a more recent area, is really how vitamin D impacts brain health. And so I'll touch a little bit on that as we go, but I have 3 main objectives of things I want to get through. First, want to understand the basics of it, a bit of background so you understand what we're talking about. What is vitamin D? How's it produced? Why should you care? That's the goal there. Second, review a few areas of research and application, especially the hard work done by these 2 over the summer. And then I want to evaluate and just discuss some of our new areas for research and kind of where we're going with this type of project. Vitamin D is just one element of health and well-being that we want to look at when we consider what is happening during development and how it affects the rest of our life. So I'm going to give David this here because he's going to be the villain today, but I couldn't be a professor without starting with a pop quiz, so.
Okay, thanks Andy for the introduction. My name is David. I'm a second-year student of Northern Outdoor and Environmental Studies here at Yukon University. I'm from Ecuador, South America, and I'm going to share with you this really funny pop quiz about vitamin D. So let's see how it's your knowledge about vitamin D. How is vitamin D produced, absorbed, or made? What do you think here? Anyone? Okay, light, C. Yep, that's right. Vitamin D is synthesized in skin when exposed to UVB radiation. That's correct. Next question. How far north before vitamin D production is severely impacted? What do you think? San Francisco or northern than that? Maybe Vancouver, Prince George, Whitehorse? Prince George? If we live above the 37th parallel, we may need vitamin D supplementation. Right here, as you can see, so Los Angeles won't need that, but yeah, from San Francisco to the north, including Seattle, including Whitehorse and Prince George, we need vitamin D supplementation for sure. So we can make enough vitamin D in Boston 4 months of the year, Edmonton 5 months of the year, Whitehorse at least 6 months of the year, and Dawson City, Old Crow 7 to 8 months of the year. So in the far north, even summer production of vitamin D is limited, so longer exposure times are needed. In short, what this chart shows us is that vitamin D production is not possible in the Yukon from winter equinox to the spring equinox. That's almost 6 to 7 months of the year. Okay, a few more questions. Let's think that I'm outside a lot in the summer, so I will have enough vitamin D stored for winter. Would that be true? False? What do you think? False? Kind of true in some way? It's false. It's very unlikely enough vitamin D is stored to last the whole winter. One more. Okay, let's say that I say, fine, I get it. I likely need regular vitamin D. I'll sit by my window and bask in the sunlight like a cat. That will help, right? Are you sure?
I think it will help because they put the babies in the sun.
Okay, yeah, that's a common belief. However, it's false. The window glass blocks the UVB light, so it won't help with the vitamin D production in that sense. Yeah, but even solar protection factor of 15 sunscreen or lotions inhibit the more than 90% of vitamin D production, so it won't be enough. Yeah. And final question. Let's say that I say, surely most of us are getting enough vitamin D from fortified milk, grains, and juice, maybe eggs, salmon. We are not. Are we? Even these efforts, there's a great deal of evidence that suggests that large proportion of the population are vitamin D deficient or is insufficient. And that's the reason why we're here and why we did this research, this literature review, and I was fortunate to be part of this project. So globally conservative estimates suggest that over 1 billion people may not get enough vitamin D.
I'll swap you out for a second and sure, come back to it.
I have
So how do you feel after your pop quiz? I mean, there's a lot of misconceptions around vitamin D. There's also this challenge of, okay, yeah, we need sunlight, but what happens if we're outside in direct sunlight all summer long? What's happening then? We have problems with skin cancer. So there is really no perfect way to ensure we're always getting enough vitamin D. So one of the major kind of pushes has been to make sure people get enough dietary vitamin D because it is a substance that we can ingest through our food. And so I stole these from the Yukon government. These are the reported health guidelines. And when we talk about supplementation with vitamin D, people talk about international units. If you're not in nursing or pharmacy, just don't care. IU means a thing. And you need that many IUs per day. It'll say so on the bottle, how many are in there. Don't worry about the details. It's a boring pharmacology thing, or pharmacy thing, I should say. So when we're talking about infants from about birth to 1 year, the recommendation is about 400 IU a day. From 1 to 70, which, wow, most of us are in that range, I assume. I assume there is no toddlers or infants here. But that's a huge range of population, and 600 IU is the recommendation. And over 70, we get to around 800, about similar as in the rest of adulthood, 600 a day. What I want to emphasize about these recommendations are these are the same recommendations that exist in Vancouver. They're the same recommendations that exist in California. And now you might just be able to say, I don't know, look out the window and understand that we might have a slightly different lifestyle than they do in Vancouver or in California. And it's possible, you know, with what we talked about earlier, that the further north you go, we might have to consider alternate strategies towards how much vitamin D people need. This has never been directly assessed in the territory. With food sources of vitamin D, there's a number of examples here, and so it tells you about how much vitamin D you'd get from a specific product. So milk, it's fortified in Canada, it's added to it. You get about 100 IU a day. So if you're a 1 to 70-year-old, like most of us in the room, you're talking about making sure you're drinking at least 6 cups of milk a day, which I sure know I am. Or you can replace it with eggs and drink about 20 eggs a day, or eat about 20 eggs a day. Again, that is to meet our dietary minimum. If you are eating 20 eggs a day, I want to meet you. I have questions. Now, salmon is one of the richest sources of vitamin D. And for dietary sources, salmon and organ meats, things like liver, are good sources of dietary vitamin D. Now, what we've seen with trends around food security, access to food, access to traditional foods, and just diet changes is people are eating a lot less of it. So obviously, for the thousands, if not longer years that people have lived in the North, people have been able to consume diets rich in vitamin D. With recent changes, following colonialism, following changes in diet and access to food, we're seeing differences in vitamin D. And so, again, not studied extensively. Just a little side note here, you can ingest too much vitamin D. So after these talks, people always go to their sad medicine cabinet and find their bottle of vitamin D. And I will promise you, if you need someone to motivate you to do this, you can email me and I'll help guilt you personally into making choices for you. But yes, there is an upper limit. So don't go home and ingest an entire bottle. It can cause issues, but the daily upper limit, it's fairly well tolerated, is around 4,000 IU a day. So most pills, most supplements are about 1,000 a day. The general recommendation is it's safe to consume one of those every day, year round for most individuals. So although the name might sound different, it's technically not a vitamin. And this is where you get into the annoying part of science. It's technically a fat-soluble prohormone, so geez. But it's produced in response to UVB light. And you would think that something we can produce in response to sunlight means we would have a lot of it, but like the pop quiz suggested, deficiency is quite common. Even in Canada and the United States, where we have food fortification that adds vitamin D, we still see widespread deficiency. So when it has been studied in the NWT and Nunavut and Alaska, we see deficiency and insufficiency levels around 63 to, in some studies, 100% of the sampled population were either insufficient or deficient in vitamin D. This is with fairly, in my opinion, low levels as the guidelines for what constitutes a sufficient level of vitamin D. So deficiency levels also rise in different groups. People with a darker complexion are more likely to be deficient. People who are of an older age, production of vitamin D decreases, is less effective. Depending on pregnancy status, people tend to need more vitamin D. Activity levels, how much time you're out in the sun, diet, and access to traditional foods, all of these impact vitamin D production. Another one is things like weather and clouds. Even just being outside on a cloudy day, vitamin D production is cut quite substantially. So overall, vitamin D is pretty key for a number of elements in your body. The big one that people often talk about is your bones and teeth. And absolutely, vitamin D is important for your bones and teeth. If you have a deficiency in vitamin D, you could develop a condition called rickets or osteomalacia. It's a softening of the bones. It's quite uncommon, except in the Canadian North, which is basically the only place it ever occurs nowadays. That's really one of the only areas it occurs occasionally. But you need a fairly low level of vitamin D to prevent rickets from occurring, outside of a few different genetic conditions. But I'm not here to say that bones and teeth aren't important. I'm a neuroscientist by training, but the brain is way more important. We care more about it. So yes, bones and teeth are important. Vitamin D is important for there. Let the skeletal biologists tell you all about it. Vitamin D does so much more than that. It regulates immune function, helps with prevention of illness. It's involved in muscle function and strength, cardiovascular health, digestive function, glycemic control. There's good evidence that low vitamin D is associated with worse reactions in type 2 diabetes and poorer outcomes. Neuron growth and stability, so those are our brain cells, and things like dopamine regulation, which regulates mood, pleasure, and movement. So there's a lot more functions here related to vitamin D outside skeletal biology, and most of our data is from the world of skeletal biology. So what we've been doing is basically we've been approaching this research from kind of 3 main perspectives. First thing is that David will talk about in a second here is we've been looking at what data is available at a population level. What can we know about groups of people? And so part of this is starting with a literature review, seeing what data are available, what can we understand from currently available sources, available birth cohort data, et cetera. And this program will kind of proceed along. In the future, we might need to do some surveys or more widespread sampling, but right now we're at the see what's out there, what do we already know? The second stage of this is something I'll talk about in a second, is understanding the mechanism by which vitamin D insufficiency impacts neurological health. So this is a part of it, a big part of the question is we actually don't know why vitamin D is important for neurological health. We have a number of ideas, but we still need to study it quite a lot more. A lot of this is done in like a lab-based setting, cellular work, or with model systems, looking at things like the gut microbiome. And then our kind of early planning stages over the next few years is to start implementing some of this knowledge that we get from our preclinical work with the information we can draw from our population studies and start looking at targeted specific populations in the north. How can we intervene? How can we prevent conditions from getting worse? So that's going to take years yet to get there, but that's where we're going. So I'll start with David here and give him a chance to talk a little bit about his summer work in this research project.
Thanks, Andy. So now we realize the importance of doing this kind of research, which in fact was a literature review. Part of launching a new research program is understanding what data are available and also what data are not available out there. So this is a big challenge in the north. So summer students here, me and Jasmine here, we work on compiling a research related to vitamin D in the northern Canada and Alaska. And primarily, we were looking for data on brain or mental health outcomes related to vitamin D. So we found approximately 60 studies which examined the following. Many were observational, most of them on population health data. Also, many were dated, like 10, 20, or 30, or over 30 years old. Most focused on rickets, as mentioned before, or bone health and nutrition, vitamin D supplementation. A few examined immune function and diabetes, and very few looked at the brain health, which was what we were looking for. Most of them looked on after multiple sclerosis. So after doing this research, the conclusion was that considerable limitations in data related to vitamin D and the brain in the north are present here. So further research is needed related to the north area, northern Canada and Alaska too.
All right. We're almost done our dance of swapping back and forth. Okay, so that was really the first research area. The short answer, as David said, is we don't know enough. We have very little focused research that has been conducted within this territory. We have some general surveys, but not really enough. With that, do you experience your life as a Yukoner and think, hey, this is just like everywhere else in Canada and the rest of the world? I agree. It turns out we have a different pattern of living up here, and part of understanding how vitamin D might affect brain health involves studying it in a context that is relevant to people who live in an environment like we do. We can't produce it year-round. So a key area of our study has been understanding the mechanisms by which vitamin D insufficiency might affect brain growth and development. And so a lot of this is done in a lab setting. So the key idea is looking at early life and then kind of looking later on and how it would affect our lives differently across the stages of life. Considerations of like what happens if you have vitamin D insufficiency before conception or during pregnancy or early life, or what if vitamin D insufficiency starts in later life. And some of these, there are better data for than others. Some are easier to study, and you might think that like it's easy to study developmental work. But you know what? People are really complicated. We have different genetics, different biologies, our diets are constantly changing, our lifestyles are constantly changing. There are a number of other factors that change. We can't live the same life that we used to live 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, 1,000 years ago. Our biology doesn't change at the same speed and the same rate as the rest of our lives. So when we look at developmental studies, it's very hard to go back and predict what's going to happen in the future. Another big challenge is that sometimes, simply put, no one recorded. No one took the blood samples or looked at biology or took this data, or if they did, it might have been done in a very unethical or unusable manner. The biggest problem, and one that is really hard to overcome as a developmental researcher, it might not feel like this, but people age really slowly. If you want to understand the consequences of some action in early childhood, at adulthood, the only option is to sit there and wait. So if you want to understand what impact vitamin D insufficiency is going to have in childhood, into adolescence, into adulthood, get ready. That study takes 25 years to run. So these types of studies are very challenging to do in people. They are being done, but I don't know about you, I don't want to wait 25 years to understand stuff that we might be able to learn more about now. So a big part of developmental research is trying to overcome this challenge of time. And you can never do it fully. The only real way is to wait and see. But we want to be able to make the best, most informed decisions without having to wait. I don't want to find out we could have done something now 25 years from now. So this is why a lot of developmental research uses model systems. So in this example, we'll talk about a study we've been conducting with rats. You might not see yourself in a rat, but it's one of the few ways that we can study these things so we can start understanding the mechanism, the impact, the health implications in a related model system. So what we conducted was a study basically where we deprived pregnant rat, or before pregnancy, we deprived these rats of vitamin D. So they either had food with vitamin D or food without. They had rat pups. They had a bunch of little pups, and then we looked at the development of those animals. This is very recent data in the sense that I was in Saskatoon on last Tuesday finishing data collection. So this is all very fresh for us. But we were really interested in what is actually happening to these animals so that we can start extrapolating and making inferences about what would be happening in other mammals' biology. So my big collaborator in this one, she's great, she's awesome. If you ever have a chance to meet her, I highly recommend it, is Wendy Marks. And so Dr. Marks is the Canada Research Chair in Developmental Origins of Health and Disease in Indigenous Populations. So she works in pediatrics at the University of Saskatchewan. It's quite the long title. DOHAD is the acronym if you want to, there you go. Oh, but Wendy is a real superstar and we've worked together for years. And what we actually saw in this very, very recently completed study is dramatic changes in the offspring after vitamin D insufficiency during pregnancy and during birth. And during the first, the postnatal period, the first 21 days. So this will take months to actually analyze all the data we collected. Again, I completed this on Tuesday and then I was analyzing data last night. But here's an example here. Don't really worry about what's being represented here. Most of us are not in this area of biology. But what we found actually was a significant decrease in body size and body density in these animals after being born to mothers who were vitamin D insufficient. This is a fairly substantial difference. It's a statistically significant effect. It doesn't really matter that you understand the context of it, other than that this is an overall bodily change after just being deficient from vitamin D for a few weeks, reproducing and continuing on. This is an example of a behavioral assay, and what we actually saw was in contrast to the decreased body weight, the vitamin D deficient animals were actually more impulsive and we're engaging in hyperactive behavior, which actually fits with some of the information from the human literature. Now, this is, again, finished on Tuesday, so we actually have quite a lot more to look at. We want to look at how the factors of their brain development have been affected. So in the next couple of months, as I sit and look at Excel spreadsheets until my eyes bleed, I will know more, but we will understand a little bit more of the mechanisms that underlie these changes. And this leads me to the last area of research and kind of where we're going from here. So yeah, great, a bunch of rats in a lab are sad. There's not enough data. How do we fix some of these problems? I don't want to wait 25 years to start making changes. There's a lot about vitamin D that we didn't cover here. Of course, it's all more complicated. Everything in biology is. For people who are in nursing or other fields in medicine, you would recognize some of those names. I won't go into too much of it. And there's a lot of nuance. But our goal here is to start looking at things that we can do in the north to start addressing some of these limitations with our knowledge about vitamin D. So I do hope that we can eventually fill some of these gaps. In other jurisdictions, other parts of the world, we know quite a lot more about how vitamin D is impacting mental health, but we don't know it all here. Now, these areas of research, again, are the kind of prospective stuff in the future. It's going to take a while to do these types of studies. So I always welcome people to have feedback, suggestions, if people want to get involved. These are things that I'm excited about. I can't do these studies alone. No one can. It involves community level research. So our main goal for the third research area is to co-develop developmental research. And I mentioned this at the start, my goal is not just vitamin D, it's broader factors related to metabolic health that affect development. Vitamin D is just one example of this. So any type of co-development of research wouldn't just only vitamin D, we'd look at other aspects of health and well-being and how it affects long-term life. So there's a lot of evidence to suggest that metabolic health or dietary health or nutrition, whatever term you want to use to describe it, affects long-term neurological health and well-being. And that's really not contentious at all. What you eat and at what stages of life these dietary interventions occur or don't occur can dramatically impact the development of your brain. Now, one example, sticking to the vitamin D world, is there's actually considerable evidence that individuals who are in a Northern First Nation may actually be differentially affected by vitamin D. There's some evidence that a different dosing guideline might be appropriate. These have never been studied directly. It's just correlational evidence from other sources. One example I used earlier is that we have seen changes in access to traditional foods, things like salmon and liver, and these were some of the sources that were very high in vitamin D. We do not have data to understand the consequences of this in our populations, certainly in this context. I can assume, and this is me guessing, it would not be a favorable outcome. So when we see changes in things like access to traditional foods, there are a number of consequences. And this isn't just in this area of vitamin D, this has been demonstrated in other areas of research as well. So vitamin D is just one example of where we want to kind of go with this metabolic and developmental research, but the topic needs to be studied more broadly in the North. We simply don't have the same level of data, the same level of research as we do in other areas. Now, these studies, like I mentioned, can't happen in isolation. So this isn't something that I could just do myself, even if I wanted to. This type of research, this developmental work, has to be done in collaboration with partners, with other groups, and with other peoples. So as this research continues, as it moves forward, my goal here is to kind of build those meaningful connections, connect with people on aspects of metabolic and developmental health, and hopefully we can start to kind of close this gap where the Davids of the future will get to do a literature review and be like, look at all this evidence. We're just like everywhere else. We know about the health outcomes. So that's the end of it here. I do have one last quiz. Who needs the D? Everybody needs a D, or we all need the D. There you go. That, I did not make this ad campaign. I think, and I will say this as a private individual, what a lost opportunity to keep a very effective ad campaign in action. I do want to acknowledge all my wonderful collaborators. David and Jasmine are in this room, Dr. Marks and everyone in the Marks Lab, Dr. Afzal Javed, and everyone who funded this, YSPOR, Econ Scholar Activity Grants, Department of Pediatrics, missed a closed bracket there, embarrassing, and the Canadian Research Chair funding. So thank you for this. Happy to connect and have questions, and make sure you get some sunlight. Take care.
Hi there, can you hear me? Hello?
Thank you so much for presenting, and thank you for your research. We're excited to see it come out later. I think we all know now that everybody needs the D. We're going to hop right into our next presentation, which is promoting youth wellness, understanding the impacts of programming in Pelly Crossing. So
I have a question. Ah! Where are you?
are they in a...
Hello, can anybody hear me?
Hi.
Hi, I wanted to ask a question about the sunlight thing. Does sitting under that sun lamp help you if you're up in, like I'm in Old Crow?
Andy says no.
No?
Maybe with your like mental wellness, I think, but not with your actual vitamin D absorption, Andy says. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I feel like probably for like depression and stuff, it'd help. You know what I mean? Feeling the sun. And he verifies my thinking. Yeah. The lamps are great for your mental health, but not so great for the vitamin D.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. I see you here, Mark. Welcome. Is your colleague Jamie there too?
Hi.
Oh, there you are, Jamie. Hi. Perfect. Alrighty. Sorry for the delay. We're running late in all of our sessions. Just a moment here. Awesome. If everyone that's attending the session will come have a seat in the chairs. Perfect. Okay, so while we're waiting for everything to get set up, can everybody stand up, please? Perfect, perfect. Awesome. If there's empty chairs, you're welcome to sit in them. Okay, now look to your left. Look to your right. Now greet your neighbor, please. Say hello, make a friend. Perfect. All right, once you've made a new friend, you can have a seat and we'll hop right into our next presentation. Thank you. Alrighty, we've got Mark and Jamie here on Zoom. Can we make them bigger or do they say small? I'll see if I can get your guys' video bigger because you're just really tiny. Alrighty. So Mark has a Bachelor of Science in Human Kinetics and a minor in Nutrition. He has been with the Y Sport team since August of 2022. And Jamie Thomas joined Y Sport in 2023 after earning a Bachelor of Arts in Health and Science and specializing in biomedical with a minor in social determinants of health. Impressive. Awesome. So you guys can take it away. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Drin Hozo, Shojri Jamie, Dawson City, Huchen, Trondic Wichin, Dinche. My name is Jamie. I'm from Dawson City, and I'm a Trondic Wichin citizen.
Hi, and my name is Mark. I'm a former research assistant with Y Spore, and I'm currently attending medical school at the University of British Columbia. So in the spirit of reconciliation, we pay our respects to the Indigenous, First Nation, Métis, and Inuit ancestors of this land, and we reaffirm our relationships with one another. So I believe most people are tuning in from the traditional territories of the Kwanlundan First Nation and the Ta'an Gwacha Council. This specific research that we're presenting today took place on the territory of the Selkirk First Nation. And as I said, I'm attending medical school at UBC, which is situated upon the unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations.
And I'm attending medical school at Dalhousie, which is on the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq in Halifax, Nova Scotia. The title of our presentation is Youth-Led and Community-Driven, Bridging Gaps in Wellness Through Culturally Relevant Programming in Pelly Crossing, Yukon. So our research project was born out of the work of a previous Y Spore junior researcher, Atticus Baker, who's shown on the slide here. Atticus is a Selkirk First Nation youth, and we started developing a relationship with Atticus when we were working in Pelly Crossing. And during his time as a junior researcher, he identified a wellness priority in his community of Pelly, which led to this research project that's both Indigenous and community-led. We really supported Atticus in the development of his research project and through things like developing the research question and the survey design. And this experience allowed Atticus to enhance his health research skills and build local research capacity in Pelly Crossing, which is really amazing. We had a terrific support team in this project that included myself and Mark, as well as Atticus. and Alex Moon, who's a former student supported by YSPOR, and of course, Michelle Leach, but really the whole YSPOR team was involved in this project and supported it in one way. We're now going to go on to share a bit more about the data collection for the research. So the project started with a lot of community engagement. Atticus's passion for promoting wellness in his community led to this identification of research priorities and the development of the research question, program selection, survey creation, and ensuring the study generated actionable insights for future youth programming. Our research team, Mark and I, really cultivated and invested in genuine relationships with Pelly Crossing youth and the whole community. And this involved us going to the community prior to, during, and after the data collection period. Mark and I traveled to Pelly sometimes weekly, and this was really important for the whole study. And we did this for about 6 months prior to the study. We also had meetings with Selkirk First Nation to develop the research objectives, and we incorporated the community's wishes, needs, and values with each step of the research project. And meaningful consultation with community members shaped the objectives, the inclusion criteria, the survey design, and this enhanced the project's relevance and success. In keeping with First Nation values, we aim to empower the community with decision-making authority during the data collection period. An example of this is when we had our beating program. Feedback after this program led to a change in our age range. And Mark will share more about this after, but this explains our increased observed attendance at subsequent programs. We also took into consideration what the youth wanted to do. We were always open to hearing what the youth and community members wanted to do to inform our future programs. And we also made sure that we held the programs on days that were best for the community. So we took into consideration things like the school schedule, cultural programming in the community, land-based camps, and any deaths in the community. And this collaborative effort with the community really generated useful data out of this project. And it was able to have a great impact on program. We were able to have a better understanding of the impact of programs on wellness.
Thanks, Jamie. So now I can talk a little bit about the survey design. We really did this in collaboration with our junior researcher, Atticus. We came up with a survey of 10 questions. They were a mix of yes, no, multiple choice, and then we had a few short answer questions. If we just look at the slide, the kind of 3 core themes behind a lot of the questions that we asked were wellness, preferences, and participation. So we wanted to know how the programs impacted the wellness of youth who participated in them. We also wanted to know what kind of programs youth wish to see in their communities. And then we also wanted to understand the factors that influence youth's participation in future programs.
So we held 8 workshops or programs, and community members contribute to the program planning throughout the study. This ensured the research aligned with local priorities and values. So the study spanned 8 weeks, featuring different social or physical activities each week. There were 5 physical activities, which included things like a group fitness class, a road hockey tournament, mountain biking, open gym, and baseball. And there were 3 social activities that included a beading workshop led by a Selkirk First Nation artist, a hand games tournament facilitated by a Selkirk First Nation citizen, and a soap making session with a Yukon First Nation owned company, Yukon Soaps. The study prioritized local facilitators for all cultural activities and whenever possible for all of the activities, really.
Thanks, Jamie. And now I can talk a little bit about the results from the study. So beginning with our demographic analysis, we found that the majority of youth who participated in our programs were between the ages of 14 and 21, with the exception of hand games, where we had majority participation from youth ages 9 to 13. So if we look over at the graph, we can see that this graph represents the total number of participants at each program. And we can see that hand games had the largest turnout. One thing that I do want to point out is our beading workshop, as Jamie mentioned earlier. On this graph, it shows that there's only 5 people who participated. However, we distributed 16 beading kits. The issue was that at the time of the study, given that it was only our second week of programs, we only had ethics approval to allow youth ages 14 to 30 to participate. And a lot of the people who participated in the beading workshop were younger than 14. So this is where we got really valuable feedback from the community to inform a change or expansion in the age range. And we were able to apply for an ethics amendment, and then we were able to expand the age range, and that really improved our participation moving forward. And I believe no fewer than 8 youth participated in all of the subsequent programs. And then finally, we have our gender analysis, and we found that men comprised 40 to 100% of participants across all the programs. So the first bit of questions, we wanted to understand the impact that all the programs had on youth wellness. And we can see here that I think it was almost 90% or more of youth said that the programs had a positive impact on their wellness. And then the one thing that's always good to note is that nobody said the programs had a negative impact on their wellness. So that's a great sign. And also, youth agreed that engaging with other youth and having access to cultural programs has a positive impact on their wellness. In terms of the programs that youth wish to see in their communities, we can see at that bottom graph on this slide that there's a clear preference for outdoor activities and sports. In some of the written responses where youth could identify specific programs that either weren't part of the study or weren't part of our multiple choice questions, they listed their top 3 programs, and it was paintball, biking, and swimming. And then also youth identified opportunities to improve the existing programs, especially trying to organize more programs and more frequently. So if we look at the pie chart on the slide, we asked youth if they felt there was enough programming in the community, and most people said either sometimes or no. So just an indication that there's an opportunity there to increase the amount of programs for youth to enjoy in the community. And then finally, we have the factors that impact youth participation. So as I mentioned earlier, youth agreed that engaging with their peers in programming has a positive impact on their wellness. And we found that the #1 factor that would encourage youth to participate in future programs was knowing that their friends are attending. When we asked youth how they would like to be informed about upcoming programs, the #1 method of communication was word of mouth. So in terms of advertising or promoting future programs and letting people know what's coming up, that's a really effective way to do that. And I would say that we also were able to kind of leverage that kind of communication style to promote our study and to get a lot of youth to participate. Similarly, youth suggested that promoting the programs through the local school and teachers would be an effective way to let them know about programs. And again, we were really able to work with the local school and do a lot of recruitment and even facilitate some of the workshops. So yeah.
After completing this study and after we had obtained the results, we traveled back to Pelly Crossing to host this final community event for the Youth Wellness Project. And we had a community lunch at the Link building at the community building in Pelly. And during this lunch, we were able to deliver the findings from the research project back to the community. And it was also just a really meaningful way for us to connect with the community again over a meal and have a conversation about the study. In the top corner here, you can see the infographic that we made to bring to the community.
And I think it's really important to highlight and just say thanks to all of the people in the community who contributed to the study. So first, Selkirk First Nation for giving us permission to engage youth in the research. as well as we're very thankful for all the support from Selkirk First Nations Recreation Department. They helped do a lot of recruitment of youth and also facilitating some of the events, as well as helping us coordinate a lot of the logistical side of things. So in terms of like facility bookings and things like that, and getting equipment for some of the programs. Similarly, a lot of support from the Yukon University staff at the Pelly campus. And then finally, the youth who participated in the study. Huge thanks to them. Really, the study wouldn't have been possible without them. And yeah, I'm just really grateful to have been part of such a fun and impactful experience. And I don't know, Jamie, if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I think you really covered it, Mark.
All right, thank you, Masi Cho, and we'll open it to questions.
Thank you so much. That's awesome to hear about such incredible programming and research you guys put on. Sounds like it was a bunch of fun for the youth. Does anybody here have any questions for the crew? I will deliver the microphone to you if you raise your hand. I'll just make raging eye contact with you all. Oh, perfect. Come join me, Zoom people.
Hi, the project seems really amazing. I'm really impressed with like all the data that you've collected. I'm just wondering, what is the follow-up after this project? Like, are there continuing to be similar programs delivered? Is there anyone kind of taking that on going forward?
Yeah, thank you for your question. All of this information, all this data we collected, we delivered back to Selkirk First Nation so they can use that to help inform further programming in the community. But we also hope to have this published eventually, so it can make a further impact in that way as well.
Awesome. Thank you. We have time for, oh, sorry. Yeah, good. Sorry, Jamie. All right, we have time for one more question. Perfect. Coming to you.
Hi, thank you. I was just wondering, I think you said in some programs there was like up to 100% of male participation. Did you see that, like, I don't know, like in biking, for example, was there a lot of like female youth that wanted to be involved in like the biking activities, or any thoughts on increasing female access to some of these programs or interest in some of the programs?
It's a really good question. Thanks. In terms of the biking, yeah, I do think that was predominantly males. We had a lot of feedback, actually. Like, that was one of the programs that was organized specifically because youth who attended previous programs, we had asked them kind of what they wanted to do moving forward, just because we wanted to make sure that the programs were as relevant to those who were participating. So I think maybe like the part of the reason why maybe we had more men participate than women would partly be because the youth who participated at the previous program were men, and they got to inform the ones that we did moving forward. So they had kind of more of a say in that. We did try to recruit both men and women equally, but I do think there was like a lot more men who participated.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you so much, Jamie, for your time and sharing with us about this amazing study you guys did. I wish you luck in medical school, especially midterms. I hope it goes great for you, and hopefully we'll be seeing you guys around in summer programming or something. Awesome. Can we have a round of applause for the crew? Thanks again. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Perfect. Awesome. 1 second here. All right. If you need to use the restroom or anything like that, feel free to take approximately 1 to 2 minutes to do so. If you take longer, you'll just be coming late. Awesome. Feel free to go do that. I will start introductions while some people linger. Again, my name is Taylor Rock. My pronouns are she, her. I'll be your MC for this next presentation, which is supporting Indigenous access to care in Dawson City. Super exciting time. But for now, I'll have you all stand up. It's that time again. Look to your left. Look to your right. If it's a new face, you know, say hello, introduce yourself. If it's somebody that you've greeted before, maybe you could do like a friendly handshake, elbow bump, you know, exchange new greetings. Perfect. Good times. We're all quite familiar now. We're all sticking each other for a few sessions here, so that's good to hear. Awesome. Do we have Piper here? Okay, so she'll be on the... Piper, are you on the computer? I will start introducing Piper while we do some technological fun stuff. Piper joined WISPOR in 2023 as a junior researcher when she began access to care for Indigenous peoples in Dawson City Community Hospital. She's passionate about safe and culturally inclusive spaces for healing and how to provide opportunities for Indigenous people. She's a research assistant now for WISPOR, working on a project at Dawson City Community Hospital, and she's gonna tell us all about that once we find her in the Zoom.
Hi, sir. Can you hear me?
Until then, I'll just heavy breathe into the microphone for all of you on Zoom.
Can you hear me? No? Can you hear me?
Yeah, Piper, we can hear you perfect.
Here, let me move this really quick.
You go ahead whenever you're ready, Piper. Thank you.
Awesome. Just go back a slide. Okay. Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Piper Fordham. I am a member of the Inland Tlingit First Nation. I first want to acknowledge that this research was done and taken place and also being presented here on the traditional territory of the Trinidad. So in my introduction, I did start with WISPOR about a year and a half, give or take a couple months in Dawson City. And I am now a research assistant. I've recently relocated to Whitehorse this past fall to pursue my degree in biological sciences at UConnU. And then I'm up here visiting and keeping that connection back and forth. So I'm not gone. Within my time in Dawson City, and in partnership with the Trundikwichin Wellness Department and the Dawson City Community Hospital, the Yukon First Nations program, and as well with a lot of guidance from the working medicine group, Gunatse, that directly translates to the plants we all pick / harvest in Han. This group consists of knowledge keepers, but they like to go by knowledge seekers now, elders, youth, citizens. We also have employees from the school. We have employees from the Yukon First Nations Health Program and WISPOR employees such as myself. And this research was to look at supporting access to care and the integration of Indigenous healing methods in healthcare and at the hospital. So this research was thought to amplify the voices of the Indigenous people, illuminating their voices and their perceptions in creating a holistic approach to health within the hospital, so mind, body, and spirit, and how to provide Indigenous medicine, nutrition, ceremony, art, and the overall environment while stepping foot inside of the hospital and how we can support that. And really, fostering reconciliation and creating a place of healing and cultural safety. So Dawson City is like approximately 1,500. I think it really depends on what time of year you're here. Winter and summer vary, two different towns. And it also occupies the furthest northern hospital as well. The closest one is the Whitehorse General Hospital, which is like a 6-hour bumpy car ride or an hour also kind of bumpy plane ride. So for gathering this information and how to connect with the community, we went out and asked, what questions do we have to ask and how do we ask them to find the answers to guide us on even where we need to go? We really tried to take an Indigenous approach to this, to creating questions that were very open and had room for stories and really for someone to express their words and be able to really advocate for them. So asking these questions around how do we provide traditional Indigenous plant medicine, ceremony, nutrition, what kinds would you like to see? How would you like these to be offered to you? What kind of art would you like to see? Stepping into the hospital, what kind of support would you like to have? We actually found that an overwhelming amount agreed that it would actually help them in their healing journey to have these services provided. And 86% said it would make them more calm and comfortable entering the hospital. We heard a lot of stories while creating these questions that many felt like a bee in a box stepping into the hospital and not having enough support, not knowing where to go. And so how can we create that safe space for them? First, we looked at the access to traditional Indigenous plant medicine, which can create a lot of conversation, especially with interactions between medications and the medicinal properties of plants, the sustainability of this, and also the knowledge and sacredness that comes with these medicines. So what steps can we take? How can we work with the community to just provide even a simple tea to go along when someone's feeling down, especially in the wintertime, I find that a cup of tea can be, like a warm hug. And so that holistic approach to uplifting someone's spirit when they have a cold, what kind of tea can you point, what kind of tea can you have? And also looking at infused honeys to get the vitamins and nutrients that can also be very difficult to get within northern communities, especially during winter time. We found the popularity of teas was at 88% and that salves were 86. So something like if you had a cut or a rash or a burn, what kind of salve could you use to support that? So I touched a little bit on our working medicine group, Gunatse, here in Dawson City. And I just really wanted to shine light to them, and they really helped guide this and where this needed to go and making sure it was done in a good way. They are a community-led group, and they with a goal to reclaim and promote intergenerational sharing and promote medicinal plants and traditions. The next, we looked at nutrition, and as you will hear in many Indigenous communities, is food is medicine. What you feed to yourself is your health. And so we heard a lot of stories as well as patients going to the hospital and refusing to eat, and just their experience in hospitals with having very processed foods, and just not having access to healthy foods, and having their family members having to provide foods for them outside of the hospital. And so we looked at what kind of foods could we provide, and the big one with 95% was stew and soup, 88% was broth, 26% also said they wanted produce from the Trunniquichin farm, so having locally sourced food. And then 44% actually in the open comments, where we'd always leave in every place to make sure people could speak or add their ideas. 44% of the open comments actually said berries. So I believe that if berries was an option, I think it would have had probably the highest rate and choice. This next one was a really big one, and it was ceremony. And what we found was that a lot, with that bee in a box theory, was that many just wanted a private area where they could regather themselves, and an area to be calm and comfortable, whether that's meeting with a doctor to have a simple conversation in a less institutional room. And also there was many great ideas of even having access to medicine bags, being able to create medicine bags, and maybe even opportunity to learn how to make medicine bags for one another, creating that determinant of health, of cultural practices, is learning and being able to provide that within the hospital. And there was a really big emphasis on having a private room and not a separate room. Throughout time, the Indigenous people have always been separated. And so making sure that it's a private room open to everyone and to all, and having a culturally safe area where one can regather. The next one was, how can we support them and even stepping foot through the door? So what do they see? And that goes for art, to the lighting, to the chairs that they sit on. And I actually want to shout out these photos are from a local artist in Dawson, and that top one up there is actually my brother's that's just got put up in the Whitehorse General Hospital. And so many said that even just having access to coffee and tea, or knowing that it's available to them while during their wait, would make them that much more comfortable and having a positive experience. You know, having the bright lights on uncomfy chairs can be very triggering for some, and so having just a little bit more of a welcoming atmosphere can just help in that overall initial step inside the hospital, and the overall connection that they made is that having that surrounding them, actually being able to connect with the doctors that much further, creating a better connection. Another big one was having an Indigenous advocate, having someone with you be able to help support in every single way, whether that's walking in, grabbing you tea, just having someone there to connect, having an Indigenous person who can also relate to what's going on and understand. And so again, really those connections is what we found. I got ahead of myself. So 81% of the respondents said that they were actually more inclined to accessing the hospital if these methods were provided. And just it kind of just proves and goes to show the benefits of also integrating traditional Indigenous methods to support physical, mental, and spiritual health within the hospital, from having, you know, a simple cup of tea, to having someone greet you at the door, to having that support and even access to know where to find more support. You know, it can make all the difference within someone accessing care, and to recreate that relationship between Indigenous individuals and the healthcare system. So within these next steps, in partnership with the Dawson City Community Hospital, the Trundikwitchin First Nations, and WISEPOR is actually creating this data that we've collected into a tool that can help support these further steps to the indigenization and programming, and how else to further support the Indigenous community, and what we can even do with these responses. How can we, you know, bring this forth and bring forth the voice of the Trundikwitchin from these responses. Another is also formulating this data to help frameworks and support more Indigenous communities all throughout the Yukon, and creating more culturally safe and a path to reconciliation throughout the Yukon in the healthcare system. So yeah, I want to thank everybody who was involved in the research, who took place, just really the whole community of Dawson, everyone here today. Yeah, I can't say thank you enough to everybody. So Ganesh Chish, and thank you. And any questions?
Oh, go ahead. Thank you so much, Piper, for sharing with us and presenting and sharing your research. We do have some time for a Q&A if you feel like it, Piper.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, perfect. Awesome. Do you have any questions in Dawson first from your guys' room?
Not all at once, guys. Come on.
Alternatively, does anyone in Whitehorse here have any questions? Perfect. I'm going to bring the mic over to a question over here, Piper, for you, okay? You people in Dawson can think for a minute here. Here you go.
First of all, thank you, Piper, for all the work you do. It's going to be relevant to not only Trondek people, but I'm sure throughout the communities in the Yukon as well. My question was, what does going into a community, what was the method you used going into the community in the very first contacts of people physically? How did you do that?
So yes, great question. So it initially started within just conversation within the hospital, and then also with the working medicine group. You know, it's very big future plans of being able to have a medicine cabinet available. And so that was a really big conversation within the local First Nations group of sharing this medicine within the healthcare system. And so we really started looking at that, and we started also looking at how else can we expand within that as well. And so connecting with Chandakwitchin citizens from youth, elders, and knowledge keepers, and actually working on one-on-one with several elders, going through each individual question, how they should be asked, is there something that we're missing, how do we connect with one another? And so I really did this with a lot of guidance from the community, and a lot of guidance also from the previous speaker, who actually, Jamie Thomas, who is a citizen here in TH, and she really helped guide just how I also carried myself as, you know, being from, you know, Teslin, and so how can I be a Yukon First Nation supporting another Yukon First Nation in a good way? Yeah.
And my final question is, is there a method or a strategy to implement the outcomes of your research in the community or in the hospital?
Yes, so actually all of this data will be given within a almost a presentation and a tool, and recommendations as well from all of the responses that we got, and also, you know, creating quotes and really trying to amplify that voice on what the Dawson Chandakwitchin people said, and how we can implement this as well. You know, I've also had several tours and meetings within the hospital, and trying to understand, you know, the barriers and how we can work around this. So having an understanding of both to be able to integrate these to the best of the capabilities that we have. And yeah.
We have one more for you, Piper. Thank you so much.
Thanks for that, Piper. Don't want to hold up your whole time here. Sometimes when we do community-based research in the communities, and you know that the research was a colonial system way back when with our people, for many, many years, and lots of things happened to our people because of those things. But the words data, survey, research, graphs, demographics, analysis, those words sometimes scare our people, even the word research. So I find that after we did research in the communities once, then we learned that those words that are scary, so we kind of change them, like data to information, you know, research to more information, like we're going to ask questions and those kinds of things, and what your people recommend, we will give back to you. Like, did you come across any of those, or like people, like, do people kind of shy away sometimes when we say research?
You know, honestly, also being Indigenous, it kind of makes me a little nervous too. And one thing is we really wanted to stick away from the word survey. When I think survey, you know, I think of like a Quiznos card that you do and get 5% off. So we really try to stick to gathering information, and really trying to create that connection with one another. And also while doing these questions and surveys and connecting, you know, not trying to make it very yes, no, and having a cup of tea and having a conversation.
Awesome. Thank you for your questions and your words, and thank you for your answers, Piper. We've got time for just 2 more questions, so we'll do one here. Here you are.
Hi, I was just wondering what the process would look like now that you've done the research and you know the things people are asking for available. How do you recruit those people that are going to make those traditional medicines and ceremonies available to people?
Yes, so for the traditional medicines, this was again born out of the Very big goal of creating a medicine cabinet with the working medicine group, Gunatse. And so that was the group that, would support that. And as well as looking at nutrition and ceremony, it is very big questions. And, many conversations even today just around finding those right people to be able to create those. And so now that we have those answers, we know that is an ask, is like, what are the next steps to looking for those people that can create those safe spaces and that can support those. So yeah, it's a really great question, and it's going to come forth in the next conversations. Now that we have these answers, where can we go with them in the best way?
Thank you so much, Piper, and thank you for your questions and your words. We got time for one more question if somebody's got a burning question for Piper.
Hi, we have a question in Old Crow.
Perfect, go ahead.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi, my name is Annika. I'm a non-Indigenous person living in Old Crow, and I just, first of all, I really like what I was hearing before about the study and the survey that you guys made. I think it's wonderful that you want to put more thoughts and care into this whole system. I just had a question regarding like a pregnant woman. I'm a mom of 6 kids, been living in the Yukon for 7 years now. And I was just wondering about, because here a lot of my friends had to, leave the village and to go get some ultrasounds or more tests in Whitehorse, or not everything can be done here. And I was just wondering, was there like a part of the study that you made that was towards regarding like pregnant moms with their families? Because usually it's not like just the one. People have more than 1 kids, and I'm sorry, I'm not really articulate, but yeah, just regarding pregnant mamas and their families, how can you support that through that study?
Yeah, I haven't thought about that. I was really trying to look at the whole community, and I wish that I had more conversations around that as well. I know that I really wanted to stick on what we can do, because I know that there's a lot within the northern communities that there's barriers to. And there was quite a few comments just even having, oral care and, eye care. And so that's a really big barrier. And I don't know how, it's another box of worms that I didn't know if that was my place to speak on. I don't know if that's the right answer, but yeah, I wish I looked more into that. I don't really have a clear answer for you. Sorry.
Thank you for your question and your words, Annika, and thank you, Piper, for your answers and your lovely presentation and all of your work in the community for your research. It's incredible. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Can we get a round of applause for our girl, Piper? Awesome. So we're now leading in 2 minutes approximately. There will be an afternoon break. I do believe there's snacks in the cafeteria. Right after that, there is an elder circle like right there, right after. So stick around, okay? And thank you so much for participating and for all of our presenters and our questions and engaging. Thank you so much. And thank you to our tech guy, Robert. Woo!